Welcome to Talking Giants player profiles and projections, brought to you by Captain Morgan. I'm your host, Bobby Skinner, here with my co-host, Justin Pennick. And today, we're looking at two back-to-back first-round picks of the New York Giants, Malik Nabers and Deonte Banks. But we're going to start with Malik Nabers, 6 foot, 200 pounds, 21 years old, just recently 21.
Yeah.
Sixth pick in the 2024 NFL draft, Justin. This guy is someone who put up 1,600 yards last year for LSU, 14 touchdowns. There's a lot to talk about him, right? We could share stats from college and stuff, our scouting reports on him, but it's just a player that I love. I've said it throughout the whole draft process, and when they drafted him, he's someone that just can be dominant at all three levels of the field, and that's what a wide receiver one is, and that's what I believe Malik Nabers is, a wide receiver one in the NFL who will have to be taken care of for years to come.
The expectation is for him to be a star. And I think he's going to be.
I don't even think it's like a bold prediction to say Malik Nabers is going to be a star in the NFL.
No, it's not. And you mentioned at every level of the field, short, intermediate, deep, and that is the first thing that Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen said during the press conference the night that they drafted him 6 overall, is they talked all three levels of the field, short, intermediate, deep, and I'm not even going to say it's been a long time since the Giants have had a receiver since like this, the Odell Beckham Jr., but really. Like looking at it from in a vacuum with Brian Daboll's offense, it could open up the entire offense to have a receiver that can attack short, intermediate, deep, get open at any level of the field. And I know we don't like to talk about camp a ton during these PPPs, but he has shown it during camp. He has kind of made it easy during camp. And this is how we don't throw around the word star all that often, Bobby Skinner, like Andrew Thomas, Brian Burns, and Dexter Lawrence. We throw around that word, right? But Malik Nabers throughout camp has been really good, and he's made some really fun flash plays that we haven't seen in a while. And yet I still feel like we're waiting for that big Malik Nabers day at this point, and we're recording this on Friday, August 2nd.
Yeah, but it's just so easy to see how good he is.
Mm-hmm. And how good he's going to be.
And I remember, the week of the draft, I did my final video for the draft was Rome Odunze, just in case the Giants did draft him. And, we had talked about Odunze versus Nabers. Odunze has just a better, character profile, where Nabers has some red flags, and Odunze is like the perfect locker room guy. And then the Giants on Hard Knocks discussed very similar things. Mm-hmm. But when I did the Odunze film breakdown, I was like, man, I like this guy. But there was such a clear gap between Nabers and Odunze, where it's like, you know what? I don't even have to think about this stuff. I want Malik Nabers on this team. I mean, it was truly unreal to see how he was able to dust SEC cornerbacks last year and get so damn open, right? And even Jaden Daniels left production on the field for him, and he still did all that, right? Of 89 catches, 1,569 yards, 14 touchdowns, over 17 yards per catch on a 70% catch rate. That's unreal. He's a guy who, again, going to catch the deep passes, which we've seen in camp. He's going to catch the short passes and take them to the house. When's the last time we've seen a Giants wide receiver, take 2 passes less than 20 yards to, and turn it into a huge gain, right? And that's what Malik Nabers is to me.
Yeah, 5.3% drop rate this past year. I mean, that's awesome. Reliable. 30 missed tackles. That was 30 missed tackles forced. That was 4th in the nation this past year.
Yeah. And the other guys' names were like Malik Washington, Smoke Harris, and Brennan Press.
And the thing that's impressive is, he gets a lot of volume too. 2nd in deep catches and 3rd in deep yards. Had at least one 20-plus yard play in every single game in 2023. 78% of his catches either resulted in a first down or a touchdown, and he was 2nd in EPA per route run as well.
Yeah, and he was the most yards per route run in college football, most yards per game for wide receivers in college football. 10 of 22 on contested catches, 2nd in touchdowns only to his own teammate Brian Thomas Jr., and then 6th in total yak for the class. I mean, he's just extremely gifted. The speed is great. He's effortless to get to his top speed. Acceleration is A+. He runs past anyone on his heels, and he does it while it looks like he's jogging, right? If he runs that out and up or that slot fade, it's just beautiful. And he plays with the physicality at the catch point where he makes tough catches too.
And we got to see him in person now, Bobby. Now, how much is he listed weight-wise? 200 pounds?
200 pounds.
boy, he doesn't look 200 pounds.
Less or more.
You know, he looks more.
Oh,
like
yeah,
okay. He's a beefy, strong dude. Like, I don't see 200
And that's
pounds.
what wide receiver ones need to be. The wide
Yes.
receiver ones can't be rail thin.
Right. So he's got it, man. You know, and he's going to bring that speed. He's going to bring that separation. He's going to bring that physicality. And the area in which the Giants, I feel, need most improvement this year is their intermediate game in that between that 10 to 19 air yard range, where they actually, you know, with Tyron under center and Tommy DeVito under center, that second half of the year, the Giants actually weren't dead last in explosive pass plays of 20-plus yards. And I am confident that, I'm knocking on wood, that they're not going to be that bad. But an area that I am concerned with, especially even with Daniel Jones at quarterback, is that 10 to 19-yard range, where the Giants were last in the NFL with plays between 10 to 19 yards with 71. Tennessee and Chicago were tied for 31st with 83. That is a crazy difference from 32nd to 31st. In that 10 to 19-yard range, Malik Nabers was 5th in yards per route run among draft-eligible players, 4th in yards after the catch per reception, and tied for the lead in missed tackles forced. So that's even a category in an area where we're talking about you make a 10 to 19-yard play to a 20-plus yard play, and then that also will make me really happy as well. And even in the short game, 6th in yards per route run, 6th in yards after the catch per reception, 4th in missed tackles forced, and deep, he's a dog, 4th in yards per route run, and the highest catch rate of 20-plus yards among draft-eligible players last year. He literally does it all.
Yeah. You know, like you said, I mean, I hate to be so, it sounds bland because you're talking about such a player, but he does truly do it all, right? And I'll just go through like some, you know, bullet points on him, right? Like he has the vertical cell while being able to tempo his routes and set everything up. Extremely snappy getting to breaks. Ability to use stutter, foot jabs, and head fakes are flawless. Uses cell and speed cuts to get into the intermediate game. You know, ability to stop on a dime, set up a lot of curls and hitches and catches, which is something that we've seen a lot of in Giants camp. Is like, okay, they're, you know, one way they're going to force feed this guy is throwing back shoulder plays, right? You know, kind of outside shoulder, you know, hitches on the outside.
Even when you're not open, you're open.
Yeah. So like, and that's something that they've had a lot of success doing it. And you mentioned, you know, the deep plays, right? Success setting up the fades, you know, speed cuts for posts. Like he just does a great job tracking the ball over his shoulder. You know, so it's just, and again, we haven't even talked about him as like the total yak threat. Like he is someone you don't get to see, because we don't get to see this in camp because they don't tackle. But he is someone like when he does get the hand, you know, the ball in his hands, he's going to make a couple guys miss, right? And that just, he is the type of guy that you can just put on a team, and he puts, like, having that guy on your roster just clearly adds points to the team.
Yeah. And the idea is that Darius Slayton won't be wide receiver 1. Jalen Hyatt, there will be less attention on him as well because there's attention on Malik Nabers because he can beat you at any point in the field, so Hyatt can attack you deep. Maybe it opens up a guy like Theo Johnson at tight end. So, you know, the impact of Malik Nabers will hopefully not just be felt in him catching the ball and him making those plays, but also allowing other guys to be open as well.
What do you see happening statistically for him this season?
Dude, what I think he gets to 1,000 yards.
I do too, right? Like this is where we say he's QB proof. Doesn't mean there won't be bad moments and frustrating moments, but like I said, I think he's just 1,000-yard receiver essentially every single year, which is what wide receiver ones do. Whether it's, you know, DJ Moore with all the bad QB play he had to play through with Carolina and then Chicago, you know, Garrett Wilson his first 2 years, like wide receiver ones, they get 1,000. Even if he doesn't get year one, like he's someone who's going to get 1,000 yards every single year.
If he has, let's just do 80 catches divided by 135 targets. That's a 59% catch rate. Let's bring that down to 80 divided by 130, 61% catch rate. I think his catch rate could be around 65, 64%.
Yeah, but 61 is like a fair mark.
Yeah, so I mean 80 catches, 1,000 over 1,000 yards. I think that's in play. He's definitely getting over 100 targets. If CeeDee Lamb led the NFL at 181 targets last year, that's insane. But if Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave can get, and I'm saying this on the top of my head, if they also can get over 100 targets in their rookie year, let's look at Olave. Because and
that would be 12.5 yards per catch, which is extremely doable for Nabers.
Olave got 119 targets his rookie year. Malik Nabers is getting over 100 targets this year.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And Olave missed games, too, I think, as well. So
He did. He played 15 games.
So, yeah, to me, he's in 1,000 yards. If he's not getting 1,000 yards this year, it means he got like 978 or some shit like that. So, yeah, I expect a big – and I expect him to be like, like, oh, who's the face of the franchise now that Saquon's gone? That's something that some people talk about. Mm-hmm. Like, I fully expect Malik Nabers to just take that crown. Even though he's not going to be better than Thomas or Dex most likely after year one, I just think he's going to be – that type of guy where he is the face of the New York Giants.
You make big plays, you score touchdowns, you're going to be the face of the New York Giants.
Absolutely. Justin, why don't you talk to us about something before we talk about Deonte Banks?
That felt like our quickest PPP like offensive player yet. Because, all right, yeah, what else is – well, Malik Nabers is good. All right, next.
He is really, 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 really good.
Thank you, next, Malik Nabers. And – what we can move on to is talking about Captain Morgan. This PPP is brought to you by the captain. His name is Morgan, and he is a captain. The official spice rum of the NFL. Malik Nabers is the right player, and he is in the game. And you need to spice some things up. Hey, we spice things up by taking a really good receiver, spice up this offense a little bit. And same goes for your drinks when you want to add a little spice to your life. When it gets bland, try Captain Morgan Original Spice Rum. It's delicious and crisp. It's perfect for game day with friends. Visit CaptainMorgan.com to find Captain near you. Please drink responsibly. Captain Morgan Original Spice Rum, 35% alcohol by volume. Captain Morgan Rum Company in New York, New York. Bobby Skinner, you'll be glad you did. And drink responsibly or else he will come find you.
Yeah, you don't want me to find you. All right, let's talk about Deonte Banks, 6'1".
I didn't see that coming.
That's like a not super bad Napoleon Dynamite thing. Deonte Banks, 6'1", 200 pounds, 23 years old, second-year cornerback. The Giants moved up one spot in the draft in 2023 to get him, and now he's thrusted into what they drafted him to be, a cornerback one. We're going to talk about a lot of him, some stat stuff, some eye test stuff. Right now, he's probably overrated by Giants fans overall, but he did show he belonged in the NFL when we had worries early on that he might really, really struggle, right? Like, and you see how his athleticism just pops and allows him to get back in the catch space in the NFL. Like, there's things that got to be worked on. There's questions of like how good is he going to be covering wide receiver ones, but he at the very least showed he belonged in the NFL as a starter.
Yeah, and I do think he was thrusted into a kind of tough situation too, where think of week one and early on in the season because the Giants don't trust their slot corner, so Adoree Jackson has to slide in the slot corner, and then it's Deonte Banks and Trey Hawkins on the outside. And I do think, like, Deonte Banks had to cover wide receiver ones for the majority of the year last year. Like, I don't think it was as simple as, the idea was that Adoree Jackson would be CB1 and Deonte Banks is CB2. I'm pretty sure I even saw something over the offseason. Oh, Bobby Skinner's getting a phone call. Pretty sure we saw something over the offseason how Deonte Banks was one of the corners in the NFL that faced wide receiver ones pretty often. So, I think a lot of his negatives and the scouting report that we actually had on him, Bobby Skinner, coming out of the draft, I do feel like it is a similar type of critique heading into year two. But overall, for the pressure that he was under to face those wide receiver ones, I thought he held up well for a rookie. But there is a huge year two jump that I think needs to be there.
Yeah, and we're going to go through like some of his his splits as like the season, because like you said, he's covered, technically covered wide receivers week one, but he did leave week one early.
He left a couple games early.
They did a lot of putting CeeDee Lamb was in the slot, so Adoree was covering the majority of that game.
But for the majority of the year, like it was like Stephon Diggs.
Arizona, they didn't really have a wide receiver one, but like you said, they did cover Diggs and double Diggs a lot. So we'll go through all that.
Terry McLaurin
and splits, but he looks like he belonged, right? The athleticism just popped. Once he's in the guy's hip, he's basically there. There's just things that he needs to work on are things that guys can't fix, even though it's not a guarantee. He needs to turn his head. He gives up plays, right?
Got to play the ball.
And this is even against bad. I remember Ronnie Bell, week 3, scores a touchdown on him, and he was in a good position to make a play.
Got to make a play on the football.
Turn your head, right? That's something that we've kind of seen consistently with him. He did struggle against the release, and guys that finished better were able to take advantage of him. Now, what we did see is when, like, there were some guys who would beat him at the release, and they weren't these, top dog receivers. He's able to get back into that catch space. But when he was facing the, Garrett Wilson, Terry McLaurin, C. Lamb, even Jacoby Myers guys, when they got him at the release, he's just gone, right? Like they're gone, and he's not able to catch up to those. But so let's just go through like his whole, like just basic stats for the year. Gave up 53 completions on 92 attempts, which is 57.6%. 644 yards, 12.2 yards per catch, 7 yards per attempt, 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and 6 pass breakups. Where are those ranked? He was ranked 24th of 83 corners in completion rate. That's pretty damn good. 45th of 83 in yards per carry, middle of the pack. 30th of 83 in pass breakups. 46th of 83 in forced incompletion rate. And then he had the 21st most yards allowed. I don't like to do the total ranking of that because there's a million guys who don't play who give up yards. But he gave up the 21st most yards allowed in the NFL. But here's some things to put this in context. One, they played so much man coverage under Wink Martindale, right? Which, can leave you vulnerable. Yeah. It'll give you a better completion rate, but it leaves you vulnerable. And he was the 3rd most targeted cornerback in the NFL. And I don't view that as like, oh, well, guys viewed him as a target and targeted him. Adore was tied with him for 3rd most in the NFL on a per snap basis. But that, to me, again, that's a Wink Martindale stat. But, I'll do a breakdown of like his first 6 games, then 4 games, and then the last 5 games when Adore came back. But his best, what I like about him is his best play came in that down the stretch last 5 games of the year.
Yeah. I mean, I have those numbers too. If you want to go through the last 5 games.
Well, I'll go through this.
Go through first,
and then we'll be done spitting a ton of numbers at you. So first 6 games, 155 coverage snaps, 52% completion percentage, 120 yards, 4.8 yards per attempt, 9.2 yards per catch. That's insane numbers. And then Adore goes down, and he really got wide receiver 1 duty when he was gone. 151 cover snaps, 61% completion rate, 393 yards in 4 games, 9.6 yards per attempt, 15.7 yards per carry. I mean, most of that stuff doubled and some tripled in essentially the same amount of snaps. And then the last 5 games, 57.6% completion percentage, 131 yards, 5 yards per attempt, and 8.7 yards per catch. So he's... And now, again, this was not at cornerback 1. This was Adore 1 taking the majority of that, but his best play did come down the stretch.
Yeah. Did you go through the weeks 11 through 15 numbers?
Yeah. That's 57.6% completion percentage, 15 to 26, 131 yards, 5 yards per attempt, and 8.7 yards per carry.
Nice. And something I think we need to distinguish, Bobby, is he was overall much better in zone than he was in man, because even weeks 11 through 15 down the stretch. Now, I will say, pretty balanced in man. Like down the stretch, I think he actually did get better, in man, where he was 12th in catch rate allowed, 33.3% in man, and then even yards per reception allowed in man was 21st. But he was 15th in yards per reception allowed in zone coverage. And then even overall, his overall season numbers, zone versus man, is drastic. Do you want me to go through those?
Yeah, and then we can not do so many numbers after that.
Okay, so he was 21st in zone coverage grade versus 50th during the weeks 11 through 15 span. But overall, 34.2 passer rating allowed in zone versus 110.9 in man. He got those interceptions in zone coverage.
Yeah.
That's probably what really brings that down, but I think that's very much in line to Deonte Banks' overall strengths as a player, is kind of seeing and reading things in zone versus in man. I think he can make better plays on the football in zone, and he showed that last year.
Well, his athleticism just pops more, right? Where it's less like, okay, I'm stressing about him cutting in or cutting out or coming back to the ball. It's more like, yeah, you have to be looking for that stuff, but you're more playing your zone, right? Yeah. Where if you get beat underneath, you're not giving up a 60-yard slant route type of shit. Where in zone, he plays a little more free and is able to trust his instincts, and that's how, like he made that interception that he had in the first game versus the Commanders was very similar to a play he made in college, right? Where his responsibility is the deep left sideline, right? The not even just the left sideline, right? The Commanders try and sneak someone there and occupy him, and he just gets back and makes a great play on the ball. and was able to do that. The Patriots was the same exact thing. Cover 3, playing the left sideline. Now, McKinney made that play happen a little more than Banks, but he was able to bring in the interception on that.
Yep.
So it's just there's a little more freedom for him there, and it's just in man coverage. It's just it's harder to intercept the ball in man coverage because when you play good man coverage, you're usually not getting the ball thrown at you.
All right. Well, catch rate, 5th lowest in zone, and he was 57th in man. And then yards per reception in man, he was 38th at 13.8. And yards per reception allowed in zone, he was 26th at 9.8. Bobby Wink Martindale ran man coverage with his corners. Like if you look at the highest rates of man coverage man coverage face or man coverage snap share, the Giants are up there in all those categories. And then if you look at zone, it's one of the lowest, obviously, but you're not going to be running zone coverage every single snap, even though, like we're saying, that Deonte Banks is better.
He's still going to play man coverage because he has man coverage skills.
But I do hope that Shane Bowen is going to utilize zone a little bit more, allow Deonte Banks to play grass, and then also asking him to play the men that are in your grass. That's part of zone coverage because clearly he is better. And I know he was billed and he was advertised as this press man corner last year. I just don't think Deonte Banks is that, but that doesn't mean that that he can't be a good corner in the NFL.
Well, he's got all the man, like he's strong, he's physical, right? He can press guys up.
Dude, the release is just bad. It's not good.
He can get into the catch space, right? But so let's do a little bit of negative though with Banks because he didn't have like some all-pro rookie year, which happens with corners. But also, it doesn't mean that you're going to have this year 2 where you make this jump. Here's where I'm worried about with Banks. Is one, I don't know if for year 2 he's just going to be really good versus wide receiver ones in the NFL. And with the way wide receivers are in the NFL, you're going to be facing them almost every single week, right? Like
there's no break.
Yeah. So that's one worry. The other thing is when you compare him to rookies last year, he didn't do the best, right? There was 9 rookie cornerbacks last year with 360 coverage snaps. He was 7th in snaps per catch, 5th in completion rate, 7th in yards allowed, 7th in yards per catch, 3rd in forced incompletion rate, and then had a 3-way tie for 4th in something that I didn't write down. So and the guy who was consistently worse than him, Tyreek Stevenson, had a better second half, a great, not just for a rookie, just great second half of the season, where the first half of the season he got just taken to the woodshed. So that's the worries with Banks. Is one, I don't know if he's ready for wide receiver 1 stuff, or if he ever is. Even though I think if they bring in a cornerback 1, I'm like, okay, we got ourselves a nice cornerback duo. I'm not sure if he's ready for wide receiver 1 duty. And you gotta all have all the good traits and all that stuff, but cornerback play a lot of times comes down to the release and the catch point, and that's where he struggles the most.
Yeah,
like you said.
Yeah.
So those are the causes for concern. But there's a lot of things pointing in the right direction with Banks. But at the end of the day, corner is such a hard position that you can't just have things pointing in the right direction and be good at the majority, because it's a very much hey, you can do your job well 90% of the time, but if you're doing it badly 10% of the time, you're a bad corner, right? It's similar to offensive line. It's not about your great plays or your middle of the plays. It's what do your worst plays look like and how often are those happening. So that's the worry. Is it's such a hard position to be consistently good at in the NFL, but he has all the traits. You saw, we've seen rookie corners just look like they don't belong, and that was never the case for really Deonte Banks.
That's a absolutely great thing. My father has a saying. You want to hear it?
I've heard a lot of his sayings. I don't know if I've heard this one.
1,000 attaboys.
I've heard this one.
And 1 oh shit. What do you get remembered for?
The oh shit.
The oh shit. Don't be the oh shit, Deonte Banks.
Yeah. So we'll see. This is one. This is a tentpole player for this Giants team. Like he can make a big. There's a big fluctuation with wins and losses on his performance.
Oh yeah.
And I think he's also the player I think I have the hardest time. Like, is he going to be he has all the ability? There's good things. He could be locked down, or we could be disappointed in year 2. So hopefully it's the positive.
Yeah, I do think
he's an extremely talented player. You saw some good things, and hopefully he's able to build upon that in year 2.
I do think making plays.
He has the mentality for it.
Yes, no, totally confidence, swagger. He's got it all. It seems like he working hard out there with Malik Nabers every single day. It does seem like to me, all right, he could be a little weak at the release, needs to get better at that for sure. But if he could be a corner that can make plays at the catch point, and this is something that I learned during the 2020 season, seeing James Bradbury get targeted a lot, and it's like, well, if we just have corners that, even if you're targeted, if you can get a hand on the football, a pass deflection, I'm not even talking about being a guy that gets 3, 4, 5, 6 plus interceptions every single year, right? Because that's when you're talking about entering the upper echelon of the NFL. But if you can be a 10-plus pass deflection guy. How many pass deflections did he have last year?
6, I believe.
6? If you can give me 10, 12, and then maybe even get in the teens if you're targeted a lot, I don't mind my CB1s being targeted a lot. Because if you can make a play on the football and you could force an incompletion, that is an extremely successful play for a defense. Because not only are you forcing it to another down, or you're getting off the field, but that is one play where that other team's wide receiver 1 does not get the football on a play that he is targeted, and that is an extremely big success. So I really do think his second year kind of riding on, can he make plays on the football?
Yeah, and that's a worry. So, all right, that's a player profile and projection. We will see you guys tomorrow. Until then, let's go Big Blue.